Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you. So I'd like to welcome everyone here to the program. I'd like to thank Shanti Deva Center and Sunny for hosting, and all the people behind the scenes at Shanti Deva Center for making this possible and having such a wonderfully robust program of all levels of courses. It's been a really incredible team there. So I want to thank all of them. And thank you, Sunny, for hosting. Thank all of you for showing up. What I want to mention again, welcome Ellie, is as people come on, I am going to ask if it's possible for you to put your cameras on. This class is really helpful that we are able to see each other at times, and there will be some exercises. If you find you're moving around a lot on the screen, then turn your camera off like that, because it gets distracting for people. But we're talking about a juicy topic, and it's also really nice for us to feel that we are in like a meditation capacity here, as if we're in a gompa, in a meditation space. And I found there, as I mentioned before, there's some teachers that are insisting that you cannot come to the class if the camera's not on. So this way we are focused. And I've had people eating dinner during classes with the camera on, drinking wine. So again, we really want to try to show up. We just have an hour and a half. Okay. We have 5 sessions through February 1st, Tuesday nights. So we will include, as I mentioned, some breakout sessions. So you may be talking to 1 or 2 other people, depending on an exercise we may do. We might be discussing all together certain questions I will present to you. We're going to be watching some short videos of His Holiness, the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And I'll be sending other referrals and things out like that of different links in the chat and things like that. So thank you so much. Okay, so let's begin. What I'd like you to do is to find a comfortable posture so we can just begin with some meditation and motivation. The main part, as you know, is to have your spine as extended as possible. But whatever is comfortable for you, find your way into that physical position. If you happen to be seated in a chair, it's perfectly fine. Just have your feet straight down on the floor. Feel the grounding with the floor, the space. And you can even put your, if you'd like, put your feet on a pillow, if that's helpful. And lightly close your eyes. And begin to bring the gaze inward. As you begin to focus on your breath, a normal, natural breath. But let's allow us to release any tension we might be holding from the activities of our day. So take a deeper breath in right now. Feel the expansion of the lungs, maybe a shifting of the abdomen. Imagine it filling your cells with oxygen, pure and light. And a deep exhalation, releasing negative tendencies we're storing up in our body and mind. Take a few deep breaths like this. And as you do this, consider why you showed up here today. And what you would really like to take with you from this class. And obviously, there may be several positive things you'd like to take from this class. Check if those things are more centered around your own experience, something you would like yourself. And are there aspects that are also focused on a rebalancing or enhancing of yourself, your mindset, so you can contribute more positively to those around you, to the planet? So imagine as if you are extending beneath the edges of our own wants and needs to have that bigger benefit with all the beings we touch up against. And from here, take a moment to set a good motivation for our time, these classes, more activities of your day, but really focused on that benefit, the influence, the support we can lend to countless living beings if we reach full enlightenment. Would you fold in whatever you glean from this time together into that path, that trajectory? So if you'd like to include that in your motivation, feel free. At the very least, directing the mind in a positive way, set a good motivation. And bringing your awareness to your breath, normal, natural breath now. Something that creates more joy right from the start in our lives is building more mindfulness. This is a word we hear a lot these days. These are all of the hot meditation courses happening now about mindfulness. So Tibetan Buddhism is slightly different than that. But one of the things Tibetan Buddhism is very focused on is what is your mind full of? when we think about being mindful, what is the mind full of? So that's one way to look at mindfulness. So as you just note and try to stay focused on the breath, I'd like you to first just notice bubbles of thought that arise right now that are maybe sweeping you away from the breath. I just want you to observe. You're just noting what your mind is full of. And please notice whatever thoughts and ideas sweep you away. You can bring your mind back to the breath. But again, quite easily we get distracted. Not a problem. There are meditations where you just watch what is arising. What I'd like you to notice now as you watch what is arising, the nature of some of the thoughts. Do you label them good or bad thoughts? Do you judge yourself for having certain thoughts? And do you get a little bit overly fluttery at having very positive thoughts? I just want you to observe that process for a moment. Are there thoughts you're able to let go of more quickly that have caused you concern? Are there thoughts you're ruminating over and over and over to build that trench of negativity? Just observe. Do the thoughts get interrupted by any pain at times? And if they do, then what kind of thoughts arise? Amidst the pain, what kind of thoughts arise? Did you ever have thoughts to analyze the pain and exactly where it is and go deep inside of it to see what it's made of? So let's return to the breath, a normal, natural breath. Now we're focused more on that. Now, here's the second part of mindfulness that can lend joy to your life, even on a light level. If we work on staying focused on something a little bit every day in meditation, like the breath or any other object you choose, you will build a level of concentration in your mind. The mind wanders, you simply bring it back. And slowly relax. When you're ready, please open your eyes and just notice for a moment how your mind is. So, what I have found, many of you have already done this from consistent meditation practice, some of which is concentration, like focusing on the breath I just mentioned, like a type of mindfulness is slightly different but similar, is it builds a presence in your mind every day. So it actually, my mind has slowed down with more and more meditation, but not in a bad way, in an attentive way. Some of you have already noticed that about your minds. So people in our culture feel that we need to do more and we need to do it faster. It doesn't really build benefit, I find, in the heart and mind, but you can check. There are times we need to act quickly and do things and get things done. Absolutely. Okay? But because there's a daily meditation practice where I'm more and more directing my attention rather than allowing distractions to pull me every which way, as we know, we are distracted thoroughly as a culture. Okay? This way, I'm building a stability. Okay? And my mind actually does open up in that space of slowness. So I'm able to see more and be more conscious and more present. So when I put my keys down, when I put my cup down or my phone down, my mind is there tracking. So you end up laser-like in what you're doing. And as a result, you get much more done than the distracted multitasking we're all doing, where we're giving everything kind of 33% attention, right? And then we forget. And then, like, what did I do with my phone? Where are my keys? Where are my glasses? And then you end up having to spend the time dealing with that. Okay. So this is one benefit I find lending to joy in your life, where you know where stuff is and you know what's going on with your mind. The other part, what is your mind full of? What is your mind full of? This is a nice exercise through this class of when really ungenerous thoughts arise in my mind towards myself or others. Can I get to a point of just observing? Can I add the word curiosity into why I had that negative judgment? Rather than getting into the negativity of overly criticizing myself or others, curiosity gives you space. Curiosity is the wedge that goes in to say, I wonder what activated that. Okay. That's for me a detached presence when negative things come up in my mind. Well, I wonder what triggered that. I don't get so down on myself. I just kind of go, wow, curious. And then more quickly, because I know myself better, I can say, well, that was because I was afraid the guy was going to hit me with his car. So there might be a natural reaction of recoiling for a moment. We might also have habits in your car. I'm just saying, where you recoil in anger because you go, what is this person doing? Why are they doing this? Why are they acting? We might say like a jerk. Well, they're just as confused as we are. That's why they make mistakes driving, right? That's why people lash out and do negative things to other people. Why? Because they're confused. That's all. Ultimately, they don't have a direct perception of the nature of reality, emptiness. So they're confused. Well, if you don't have that either, you're confused too. So here we all are all in the same pot. Okay. So I like to give that benefit of the doubt to myself and others, which really grows compassion, which we're going to talk about later in the course. Okay. So I just wanted to explain how these things fit together as we waltz into joy. Okay. So Tibetan saying that's in, and this is based on the Book of Joy, but I'm going to bring some self-compassion exercises in and some other things, some videos as well from some of the talks they've had about the Book of Joy with His Holiness and Archbishop Desmond Tutu, which is very timely because he's just passed away. Tibetan saying that's in the book is, wherever you have friends, that's your country. And wherever you receive love, that's your home. So it's nice to think about the bigger picture of the country, the community, that bigger outer thing. And where's your home? That feeling of, how do you receive love, which also includes loving yourself. So we are going to talk more about that. And I want to talk about, as we're familiar, is the authors of the Book of Joy. And how do we really, they've created a roadmap of happiness. So we can do this as well. And I'm basing this somewhat on this book, but as I said, I'm adding some other things, but we're very familiar with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. It wasn't that they really authored it. It was interviews that were done and created in the book in Dharamsala. As you know, His Holiness, born in 1935, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, born in 1931. They are old friends. They are both Nobel Peace Prize winners. His Holiness, born in a remote village in Tibet, one of 16 children, 9 of which had died in infancy, born in eastern Tibet, fled Tibet in 1959 during the communist Chinese invasion, and now lives in exile in Dharamsala, northwest India, like that. Archbishop Desmond Tutu, born in 1931, very difficult family life, was a high school teacher before he studied theology. He was ordained in 1960 and was the Archbishop Emeritus of the Republic of South Africa. Went through the apartheid regime there, quite unbelievable of what he went through. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1984. His Holiness received it in 1989. So they have a lot of parallels in their lives. He won it for his opposition to the apartheid regime in South Africa, like that, and was very integral to the chair, basically, of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was a pioneering way for them to get through the terrors and the horrors of apartheid. So rather than just turning the country over in some kind of reparation thing with a lot of anger, they allow these Truth and Reconciliation Commissions, as most of you are familiar with, where people could discuss with their tormentors what happened and tell their stories and forgive. Quite a powerful thing we can all learn from. And there's more and more of that work being done around the planet, which I think is the way to heal. The actual author and editor of the book, which is interesting, that actually has a parallel with my life, is a guy named Douglas Abrams, who put the book together. He's dedicated to working with visionaries who are interested in creating a wiser, healthier, more just world like that. He's also Jewish by birth, which is my background, and he lives in Santa Cruz, California, I believe. I think he still lives here, which happens to be where I'm living right now. So it's interesting putting all these different things together. And so here's the question they were posed with from him is, how do we find joy? Many of you have read the book. How do we find joy in the face of life's inevitable suffering? And so basically the book are interviews with them through different walks of their lives of how does this work? And here are two people that went through some incredible horrors, one of which lost his country, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, was forced to exile. They both had to witness their country people being slaughtered and tortured, which is still going on in Tibet right now. And how do they still somehow, you see both of them, His Holiness and Archbishop Desmond Tutu when he was alive, smiling, dancing, laughing, joking. How is that possible? Okay, so this is from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I just want to read this quote. We have to take care of ourselves without selfishly taking care of ourselves. Okay, if we don't take care of ourselves, we cannot survive. So we need to do that. Okay? We should have wise selfishness rather than foolish selfishness. Foolish selfishness means you just think only of yourself. You don't care about others. You bully others, exploit others. In fact, taking care of others, helping others, ultimately is the way to discover your own joy and to have a happy life. So this is what he's calling wise selfishness, wise selfishness. Also from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, which is timely now. This was written long before COVID-19. But he said, if your health is strong, when viruses come, they will not make you sick. Okay, now I know that's not completely true with COVID-19, but His Holiness says similarly, if your mental health is sound, then when disturbances come, you will have some distress, but quickly recover. If your mental health is not good, then small disturbances, small problems will cause you much pain and suffering. So think about in your own life, have you noticed the imbalance? If the mind is not stable enough, I find through the trajectory of Tibetan Buddhism or even meditation practice that doesn't have to be called Buddhist, okay, it builds a consistent balance to the mind. So when I asked you to look at what was arising in your mind, but I asked from a detached viewpoint. So not having judgments about it, but simply observing. So one way that I find really helpful with what is in my mind, what is my mind full of, even as a nun, I will notice irritation or frustration or sadness in my mind. But now I watch that bubble, let's say of sadness. And something I will dedicate today is, so we have a dear monk friend named Punsok. He's from Israel. I believe he's in his 40s, so he's quite young. And I think he was studying in his final classes of the Larampa Geshe program, which is the highest honors PhD program. He was studying, I believe, at South India Ganden or Drepung, the big monasteries there, trying to complete that course of study, and had some sort of brain hemorrhage just within the past week. An aneurysm, something like that. He was flown back to Israel, where he is in a coma now. And we've been all doing prayers for him, which we were told, if you want to recite Medicine Buddha mantras, a brief medicine Buddha practice, the King of Prayers, dedicating like that is very, very helpful right now to him. And Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche said to dedicate to his taking a precious human rebirth. It doesn't look good for him surviving, unfortunately, right now, but anything's possible. So again, when I think of things like this, I get very sad. So I watch the sadness come up. I don't have to get overly involved where I'm paralyzed. Like I acknowledge and I just say, there's sadness. Oh, there's a lot of sadness. Okay. What can I do? Oh, let me do these practices. The practices actually, I find, give me sustenance. So many of you are familiar with passages that you do in life that keep you buoyant through the difficulties. You know, you're rowing your boat, the big wave comes, okay? It's going to take a little bit more active rowing to get me over the waves through the storm, okay? So I engage in a little bit more practice. I make sure I'm taking care of myself, eating well, getting some exercise, okay? Being very skillful with what I'm reading, what I'm watching online, what I'm looking at to keep the mind more balanced and not sinking, in this case, might be into over sadness, where then I'm kind of stuck. You know, making sure I'm positively showing up for others and doing things for others. So you could be in a shop. I happen to be in a shop today. I have to get a new mattress for this little room I'm moving into. And I've never bought a mattress before. I don't know much about mattresses. So I went into the shop and had a very nice interaction with this guy, whether I buy that mattress or not, but it was just a really nice rapport. And it really kind of lifted up. He even commented to me how, you know, there weren't many people there and he was really happy I came in and it really gave him a lift today. So we can always have those experiences if we choose and if we direct our mind in that direction. This is habituating our mind in that direction. That's what we have to do. This is from Archbishop Desmond Tutu right now. Joy is much bigger than happiness. Okay. While happiness is often seen as being dependent on external circumstances, isn't it a lot? Okay. Joy is not. So again, happiness is like, oh, I want to have some ice cream. I want there not to be any traffic today. I wish the prices were cheaper here. I wish this was happening like this. All these externals. But for me, the joy, it's internal. It's the guiding light in me that's always there. Okay, so we're going to look at how do I get more of that? We all need more of that right now because COVID is just really taking us down. Okay, but you don't have to be taken down in COVID. There's some people that are such a beacon. As we know, some of you have been through this class before, but I just want to bring up joy is associated with feelings that are as varied as, okay, and these are some things listed in the book of joy, okay? Pleasure of the senses, no question. You smell an incredible flower, right? And some aroma coming out of incredible kitchen when you're hungry, amazing, like that. Or you see an incredible sunset. You know, I'm living not far from the beach right now. I will be moving into the redwoods where it's quite dark and everything, but right now I can, within, 10 minutes, be overlooking most incredible, beautiful coastal view. So letting that fill me is getting to see that as much as I can, especially if I'm feeling down and feeling like, oh, and go out and just have a look at something. In nature, I find is really helpful. Joy is associated with amusement. Okay, laughter. Okay, and here from a chuckle to a deep belly laugh, Think about it. How is it that His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, and Archbishop Desmond Tutu, they were laughing so often together, somehow. So what, I know a lot of people said they're streaming videos. Sometimes watch something funny and have a laugh with somebody, even if it's an old movie you saw before. There's something about that laughter together that really, as you know, the amusement in a pure, nice way to amuse yourself, okay? Another thing associated, contentment, like a calm satisfaction. That I find that contentment is a deep inner feeling, like this is good now, satisfied in that level inside. We also have excitement. Joy can be associated with this excitement, which is often response to a novelty, response to a challenge, like that. And I find it's interesting because I'm working with Land of Medicine Buddha right now, and there's some days it's really, really challenging. And I would even label, like, not in a great way sometimes. Like sometimes I'm just thinking like, I just need to take a break today. Like tomorrow will be different. Okay. But then we also will have a meeting, and suddenly these teams of people, and there seems to be some clarity, and there seems to be some driving light that comes through it all. And everybody suddenly gets on the train through the right door. And now again, who's defining the right door and all that? But we have an agreement on something. And suddenly it seems like we're all having a nice train ride together. And then I think that's exciting. Like I see where we're headed once you get all the players in place. And then I get really excited. Here's joy associated with relief. Relief. Think about relief. Relief can follow another emotion like fear, anxiety, or pleasure. Okay. And think about, like, right now we're having another surge of COVID. In a month or two, most probably it's going to look different. We now have been through this for nearly 2 years. So we are getting used to the swings. They did say it was going to take a while till we would get out of this. Okay. But you see suddenly, like my sister just said, in England, she's in England, they are reaching maybe past their peak now, where like 2 weeks ago, it was really, really bad there. And she was telling me how bad, and we hadn't quite surged yet in the States. So again, as you know, there's these cycles. So there's a little bit of, she said the other day, like, oh, she's so relieved. Okay, yes, because suddenly less people infected, less chance of problems, and the anxiety goes down then, like that. Joy is associated with wonder, wonderful word, wonder. Something, it can go with something astonishing, something admirable, like that. And then joy is also associated with ecstasy or bliss, where you're really, for a moment, transported outside of yourself. That can be incredible as well. And there's many other things that they mention, such as exultation, radiant pride, unhealthy jubilation. And this is more about when people relish another's suffering, but some people get joy out of that. I always found it interesting, and this wasn't necessarily joy, but this can go into that kind of fearful wonder. Did you ever notice, this reminded me once, there was a fire in my neighborhood years ago, a house burned down, and or part of it was burned, and occasionally that would happen. And a lot of the neighbors would go down the street and stand outside the house, and the fire company was there, and the hoses, and many of you have experienced that. And so, but people stand there, and you see their faces, and you're kind of like, why is everybody standing there looking at somebody's tragedy? But people, need to be witness to it. They want to be there. They don't want to miss out. I've seen it with car accidents you've seen. And sometimes I'm amazed where there's so much traffic, and you finally get there, and it's not a bad car accident, but it's like a little fender bender, but everybody has to kind of see what's somebody else's misfortune. Like when you see it, you're immediately like, oh, I'm really glad that's not me. But somehow we have this view that we need to look at in that wonder, like that. Well, I'm talking about, let's move into something healthier, like that. We also have elevation, a joy with elevation. When you witness someone else's generosity or compassion, it lifts you up, right? And joy of gratitude, okay, which is huge. We all know the place of gratitude, like that. So I just wanted to mention a few ways that how different areas, how joy gets expressed, like that. And so this is adding what His Holiness says: the suffering from a natural disaster we can't control, okay? But the suffering of our daily disasters we can. And it's all about how do you manage your mind? When it comes, as Holiness goes on to say, when it comes to personal happiness, there's a lot we can do as individuals. There's a lot we can do as individuals. So that's what we're going to show in here. Okay. Joy can be transformed from an ephemeral state into some enduring trait that you have. So it can be very fleeting into a way that you actually have a lasting joy through life. And it seems that His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu have built that into their lives. So it is possible for each and every one of us to do the same. Okay. So I want to talk about, I'm going to give you a list right now. Obstacles to joy. Okay. And how do we discover joy in the face of inevitable challenges? Okay. And I'm going to give you a list, and I'm going to ask you also to add to the list. Let me just, okay. And what also gets in the way, would you say? And I'm going to have you in little breakout groups that I'm going to try to do myself. So bear with me because it's the first time I've done that. But let me give you this list first. There's 8 of them. If you want to jot them down, great. Number 1, fear, stress, anxiety. And this is, again, how can we discover joy in the face of inevitable challenges? Here are the challenges. Here are these obstacles. Number 1, fear, stress, anxiety. Number 2, frustration and anger. 3, sadness and grief. Number 4, despair. Number 5, loneliness. Number 6, envy or jealousy. Number 7, suffering and adversity. Number 8, illness and fear of death. So once again, fear, stress, anxiety. Number 2, frustration and anger. Number 3, sadness and grief. Number 4, despair. Number 5, loneliness. Number 6, envy or jealousy. Number 7, suffering and adversity. And number 8, illness and fear of death. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you into breakout groups. Sunny, do you want me to put you in a group? Okay, great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 7 groups of 3. So you'll have 2 other people. You have 10 minutes. And what I'll do is, so each person really has about 3 minutes to talk about, and please discuss those 8 obstacles. Okay. Would you add to them? Are there other things you're experiencing that are obstacles to your joy? Okay. And what kind of prevents you? What are some antidotes you might layer in right now before we get actively talking about antidotes? What has helped, but how do some of those obstacles relate in your life, if you want to open up about that? Okay, let me put you in the groups. Bear with me. Okay, it looks like, here we go. Oh, look at this. I'm getting fancy here. Okay. So I do want you to make sure everybody has time to talk. I just put a few Floridians together. Okay. Even though one doesn't live in Florida anymore. Okay, and one group is going to have 2 people. I hope I got everybody. Okay, do your best. Sunny, I may have forgotten, not been able to get you in a group. I'm so sorry. Let me see if I can add you.
Okay, or else it's okay. So let's set it for 10 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let me put a note to them. Okay. I didn't know how to set the time though.
Right, that's why, you know what, I send it up on my cell phone, so it rings.
Okay,
and
great.
then you just, at that point, you just end the meeting. It'll give you a 60, it'll give the participants
That's right.
60 seconds.
Okay. Super. That's great. Well, Shelley, we can, Sunny, we can talk.
Yeah, okay. I'll
We'll be
do
our own
that.
group.
Okay.
So I was just thinking of those 8, would you add anything to it? I think it covers most of the obstacles. Would you add anything?
I wouldn't add anything. I think for
Yeah.
myself, despair is the one that gets me.
Despair is that, so that's something that's going on for you now?
I think despair is like the way I habitually respond to, unhappy situations. So, I give up, oh no,
Okay.
woe is me.
Okay, interesting.
It's a real habit. So, yeah.
Have you done, are there things you've done that have helped you cope with that?
Yeah, for sure. I think, gratitude. Now, when the antidotes, I'm sure it's going to, yeah, they mentioned gratitude in the book and how important it is. And it really is. If you feel it, if you can feel it, sometimes I just can't feel it, I know I'm supposed to feel it. So at least I'm kind of like that far, but I don't feel it. But gratitude is good. Also, what you mentioned, the joy of elevation. I've never heard that before, which is being inspired. That is like Tony Robbins used to say, change your mind state, and that's exactly what Buddhism teaches. Being inspired changes your mind state so that you're no longer in that place, and so that's good. It's kind of like a change. So, yeah.
That's a great one. That's a great one, because I think that we have to remember there is a lot of positive on the planet and some people really fostering that. But we get into habits of looking at all the negative going on, and which leads to despair. So I think that and one of the, obviously the first pillar of joy is perspective. So there's always, like, when I think of His Holiness losing his country, like having to watch like 1.3 million of his country people slaughtered, then I go, what kind of problem do I have? What possible, oh, there's a pandemic, or, my car didn't start the other day. You know what I mean? It's like, I have to buy a mattress. So what? Like, what really
problems?
Yeah, there's not, I look at LMB and I think there are some really hefty problems this center has of what's gone, but again, it's like if I want to put that in perspective with the wildfires that happened last year in this area, well, that's a whole different thing. That's, you know what I mean? Like, then you go, oh, or if I see people really destitute, there's a lot of homeless people here, right? And living in tents, living in parking lots. I see them in their campers, but to see them still showing kindness and helping other people, then I go, well, it lifts you up, it elevates. Yeah, absolutely.
That is inspiring to see somebody who's homeless and yet he or she can retain their like humanity. You know, when you think that of, you know, so if they can retain their humanity, then it shouldn't be too difficult, you know, for me to retain mine and show kindness or, you know, get out of the state.
That's right.
So yeah. What I've noticed, you know, I wouldn't say this to anybody, just anybody, because they wouldn't understand it. But practicing Buddhism, it gives you, I don't know what exactly it does, but it gives you either the strength of mind or strengthens your perspective or something, and things just are different. You
Yes.
go to a new level, you know.
Now,
which
one
is-
thing, Shelley, one thing, Sunny, sorry that I mentioned, should we stop the recording right now for this session, or to start it again, or does that interrupt?
Oh, good idea.
We can pause it, right? So what I'd like is, welcome back from the breakout groups. Can you, anybody unmute to give me a little synopsis from your group of any little insight that you had from talking with someone else? Anything you'd like to share, please feel free.
In our group, some of the things that were added was Sheila had added a fear of failure to the fear, stress, anxiety one. And Margot had mentioned that in despair, also that feeling of hopelessness. So just to that point of, were there additional things that could be added? I thought that those were very intriguing.
Great. Is that Kelly?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So now, again, I have a feeling they're subsuming those under those areas, but it's certainly nice to identify. And you know, what's interesting too, and thank you for mentioning, is we get really fine-tuned with the obstacles. Like despair is heavy, and Sunny and I were talking about that, but then yeah, we want to mention hopelessness. You know, people just want to give up. It's over. You know, that can be really, really heavy. And fear of failure comes up for a lot of people, which makes us afraid to do things, to try things, right? Like that. And it's interesting, I'm noticing, you know, Rinpoche had advised me to come to help Land of Medicine Buddha, and it's quite a struggle right now, but it's, you know, the fear of failure isn't there for me at all. Like, I've done this with 2 other centers, and I had it operating at those 2 centers. I know that. I remember this, but somehow here, I'm going to give it my best shot, as is everybody on the team. And if it works, or like one person was getting very upset the other day about that she can't let go. She's doing too much. She has too much on her plate, and she's quite amazing. And then I said to her, which I'm going to get into the first pillar of joy, perspective. And I said, look, you can only do your best. I said, why are you beating yourself up but we do beat ourselves up, right? You know, and I went, honestly, you're doing a great job. I'm quite amazed. I've never worked with this woman before, so I'm really like, you're doing great, and you can only do your best. And I had to take a mental health afternoon the other day, because I realized I was doing these 40, 50-hour weeks, and I was hired to do like 20 to 25 hours, and I have other things I'm doing. So suddenly it's molted into 40 to 50 hours. And I also have moving issues, like whether I just said mundanely buying a mattress, but I have to deal with, am I changing my car insurance, which requires me to change my license, which requires me to change the registration. It's a whole, and you know, all of those require like an hour on the phone, going to the DMV, like all these, and I haven't even done those yet, and just trying to get, you know, so I kind of was like, no, I just need to kind of take care of some of those things that are bogging me down, and that's the best I can do. And so it's not, the center's not just about me, one person. So I think getting perspective, we're going to talk about that in a moment. What else from people?
Well, we kind of thought that there was like a gradation, like in a sense of like obstacles to, say, being unhappy versus obstacles of joy. Joy is a deeper sense of happiness. And like in that list that you gave us, like, okay, you may be jealous of something, but that's sort of like, is that really going to make you that unhappy? Whereas despair, like the loss of, like my husband's like talking about her husband. It was like, it's such a deep, deep sense. And you wonder, like, how do you get through that kind of deep obstacle? And then we talked about maybe, thinking about impermanence, and then thinking about, some of the parts of our practices that then can really help with those really core difficulties of obstacles to joy.
Yeah, fantastic. Absolutely. Because the thing is, despair is one thing, Maureen, that you're talking about, which absolutely, but when you mention the loss of a loved one, I think it also really tips into sadness and grief, which is a different one of the obstacles. And sadness and grief, like there's times you just need to experience part of it and then look there, but without getting bogged down in the paralysis of it. So I think what you just mentioned is huge of what helps us, gratitude, of course, and generosity of heart towards yourself and others, and self-compassion techniques, and a lot of things we're going to talk about. Yeah, thank you. What else anybody would like to mention? Maybe one last comment?
Yeah, we had talked about two things that we thought might be missing. One was aversion, and I had said I feel like sometimes I have an aversion to being compassionate to myself. And then the second one that came up was pride. We thought that also could be an obstacle.
Great, absolutely. And I would put aversion, it's really another word for frustration and anger. So I would put it in that one, in that category. And then, sorry, the last one you said was pride.
Pride.
Pride, yeah. Pride, that's a great one. I'm just looking at the different levels, which I would add probably, because definitely pride. I mean, it could tip into envy. You could get it, but pride definitely. And so we're also looking at, and this is just the way the book had sectioned some things out that I took, was pride along with aversion, along with desire and attachment. That's one. Confusion, doubt, and holding wrong views are the 6 root delusions in Buddhism. So again, these obstacles run along Buddhist lines, and I would absolutely, you could definitely add pride, which really creates a lot. It's a big obstacle to joy, no question. Thank
What
you.
would disappointment be?
Disappointment,
Yeah.
I mean, I might put disappointment, you could, sadness and grief. Sometimes it falls into despair and loneliness. Again, you could put it in those categories, and you can always add subgroups. So a lot of it is just for us looking now at all the stumbling blocks we get hooked on, and look at the planet right now. I'm around people all day long that are, first of all, this area where I'm living, there's a lot of people traumatized from last year's fires. And I mean, really traumatized. Like people are really, I drove through that area a couple months ago, and I have friends that live there, and Vajrapani is there. So I've been visited there, and you can't help it. You're driving through these incredible scars of these fires, and some of my friends' houses burned down. So, had I been living in that, and you're evacuated and you come back and there's just ashes, like it's really devastating. Some of the places I knew and played and that are gone. So that's hard like that. And you see also, unfortunately, lot after lot emptied. You see where the footprint of the house was, and one after another for sale signs. People are done. They don't want, you can't even get fire insurance now. We were just, the little hurdles with running a residential retreat center in California. So Vajrapani and Land of Medicine Buddha have now been informed. We had the same liability insurance carrier who has informed us, that handles a lot of churches, that they are not going to be carrying our liability insurance anymore because of the wildfires.
Wow.
So we have to find somebody else. And it's probably going to cost 3 to 4 times more than we've been paying, which was already really expensive. So this is the kind of hurdles. But again, you go, okay, and let me quote His Holiness, who quotes Master Shantideva as a tool. You ask yourself again and again, please, what can I do to participate and help in the most beneficial way I can. Okay? What we're going to do is that insurance carrier said, we'll look for you for another carrier. We need your authorization to do it. Okay, we said, do it. You got our authorization. And we're looking ourselves. And we're working with Vajrapani to find a carrier. So this is all we can do. Nothing else we can do. Until they come back and say, no one will insure you, we're going to proceed. We'll raise the money. We'll figure it out. That's all we can do. So I'm not going to lose sleep over it at night because we're doing everything we can do. So I've got a compatriot who's losing sleep, and I keep trying to say, but there's nothing else. We're doing everything we can do. So if the center has to shut, which I don't think it will, everybody's in the same boat. The state of California is also dealing with it. So that's all we can do. So I have to learn to let it go. I have to learn to let it go. There are some things that have me worried. There's things in the past running a couple other centers where I was up every night. I couldn't separate it. So I've learned from that. I've learned that it's not beneficial. It's hard on the health. It's really hard on the mind. So we slowly make our passage. And there's some good days, and there might be some other days that you're dealing with your mind, and then you come back slowly, slowly. So let me go on a bit, and let's just keep that list in mind of what are the obstacles, because we're going to move through those obstacles like that. Okay, now here's what happens from Archbishop Desmond Tutu. When those obstacles arise, look at your mind. How much control do you have over your emotions? Okay, we've all been in those situations. We get afraid, we get angry, we get sad, we feel hopeless, lonely, prideful, we get jealous. You suffer, there's adversity, forest fires, for instance, hurricanes, like that. You may have incredible poor health with raging pain every day. You may have an immense fear of death. These are the obstacles. How's your mind in the face of those obstacles? Now we know sometimes it's not very good. Okay, so this is about rebalancing. This is about first just saying, wow, like I have to say, 2 days ago was not very good for my mind. Some things that arose. And that's when I just had a kind of in the afternoon say, you know what, just take care of these things, these logistical things you need to do, because that's kind of keeps coming up. It's out there. So we'll get it sorted, give a little space. So this is from Archbishop Desmond Tutu. When you get out of control, and I hate to break it to you, but it's going to happen. For some people, it happens daily. For some of us, a couple times a week, several times a month. It's normal human behavior. Please know that. This is from Archbishop Desmond Tutu. The thing is, he says, don't feel guilty. We don't have a lot of control over our feelings. Emotions are spontaneous things that arise. Okay. Now, His Holiness is going to take it further. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, that will say, ultimately, you can have control over your emotions. Well, that's where we're headed on this path. That's where we're headed on the Buddhist path. Okay. But please, and I'll say this again and again, please be gentle and patient with yourself when you lose control. It is the nature of a human being, because a human being means we're not a Buddha yet. We're not perfect. As a result, sometimes we're going to lose it. And losing it doesn't mean out with other people. You could be folding in and crashing in yourself. Severe depression, withdrawal, things like that. Or some people lash out at others, make mistakes. Some people end up in a very mindless state, so be very careful. This is how I felt a couple days ago. Imbalanced, where somebody has a car accident by accident. They're, driving around too crazily, or that's when people snap at people like that. So again, that is going to happen. It's a given. Okay. Be gentle with yourself. Okay. So I want to introduce right here, just as a little exercise, please, for you to do before the next session next week. Okay. Some of you have done this, from Kristen Neff, self-compassion practices. Self-compassion practices. Okay. So basically, when you notice the out of control is happening, I'm just going to bring this up a bit. And I want to see if I can, maybe I can share the link, or I can at least mhm. Ah, here we go. Some of you have done this with me before, but Kristen Neff is a psychologist. She's wonderful, writes about self-compassion. She has a website. And what she talks about is dealing sometimes with less compassionate states of mind that arise for you, okay? And we take it out on ourselves. We're very, very hard on ourselves. So this is where Archbishop Desmond Tutu is saying, don't feel guilty, but some of us were raised with guilt, so it's a natural tendency. So what do? And you're up at night ruminating, what if, and the coulda, shoulda, woulda, and what, okay. So she's dealing with it with some things of mindfulness, number one, common humanity, and loving kindness. A basic self-compassion break. Please try this week. If you notice, and anytime you find you're running out of balance, being hard on yourself, because then we're going to be hard on others. So here's how she deals with it. Number one, I'd like you to just close your eyes for a moment. Find a comfortable posture. Take a couple of deep breaths. Really, again, feeling the oxygen moving through your cells, opening up space in the mind, heart, releasing negative tendencies. I'd like you to think of a situation in your life right now that is difficult, that's causing you stress. I'd like you to just bring the situation to mind and notice how your body and mind experiences just bringing the situation to mind. So do you actually feel the stress and the emotional discomfort in your body? There's 3 ways we can deal with this with self-compassion: mindfulness, shared humanity, and loving kindness. Let's begin with mindfulness in relation to the situation you brought up that is very difficult. Mindfulness allows you to just note what is happening, to acknowledge. Can you say to yourself, in relation to the situation, this is a moment of suffering. And there's other options that you could say to yourself. And just acknowledge, this hurts. Ouch. Or perhaps, this is stressful. So can you place that mindfulness in your mind right now in relation to this situation? Sometimes this is the best we can do, just acknowledging with our mindfulness. Here we are. This is what's happening. So here is using common or shared humanity in relation to the situation. Understanding samsara's nature, suffering is a part of life. Suffering is a part of life. Can you say that to yourself in this situation? And here are some options, some other options. Other people feel this way too. Other people experience this. Or, I'm not alone. Or, everyone struggles in some way. You might even want to put your hand on your heart, wrap your arms around yourself, whatever you feel you need. Just adopt this soothing touch, whatever feels right for you in this moment. Now let's look at loving kindness, addressing this with loving kindness, this situation. Can you say to yourself right now, in relation to the situation, may I be kind to myself. May I be kind to myself. And you can even ask yourself right now, or when you're in the situation again, what do I need to hear right now to express kindness to myself? What do I need to hear right now to express kindness to myself? Is there a phrase that speaks to you in your particular situation, such as, May I give myself the compassion that I need? May I learn to accept myself as I am? May I be strong? Or may I be patient? Or may I forgive myself? So find one or more of those phrases. Can you apply them right now? What is it you need to hear right now in relation to the situation? Please relax. Slowly open your eyes. These exercises, again, mindfulness, shared humanity or common humanity, loving kindness directed toward yourself, can be used at any time. Anytime you like. You notice your mind is headed downhill, not in a good direction, let's say. One of those obstacles to joy is there, which we know is going to come up. That's normal. Can you learn to reach for one of those experiences, one of those things? What do you want to say to yourself gently, patiently, kindly? And we're going to talk about many more antidotes right now, but I just wanted to get you a little bit started before we close. Try this week. I'd love to hear your experiences. And if you have the Book of Joy, some of you have not read it, I highly recommend. Sunny has put in the chat the recommended course text. There's a link there if you're interested. So please have a look at that. And she has recordings and everything of how you can access the recordings if you miss something. But really have a look at the book. It's well worth it. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention, I was trying to find it. Somebody had sent it to me on WhatsApp and I couldn't get it into the computer, is there's a video about the book, of how they made the book, that's well worth watching. So if I can find that, or if any of you know that for the next week, and put it in the chat, that is really nice to watch as well. And I would really recommend. And also it's very uplifting how you see these two people that have faced these insurmountable things and how they're finding joy. But please try to do those exercises. And I'd like you to really keep noticing the obstacles to joy. Which one do you get mostly hooked by? We're going to talk about the antidotes as we go forward, basing it also on the 8 pillars of joy that are listed in the book and some other exercises. So just before we close, are there any questions right now, any concerns, anything that's coming up around what we're talking about? Okay, everybody okay? Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to wish you a joyful week, but I'm also acknowledging that it can be tough out there. Okay. So again, be gentle with yourself. Do you need a bubble bath to take? Does that cheer you up? Do you want an ice cream cone or a piece of pizza or a long walk on the beach with a friend? Or make sure those are built in. It's healthy to do some kindness for yourself in the process of trying to make your mind more buoyant in the face of the planet and people's problems. And here's something else. I read this article this week. Some of you may have seen it in the New York Times. A writer wrote about how, I forget the name, but how the love story with California was over for her. The romance she had. She lives in California. And there used to be a kind of thing about California. I think I had it when I moved out here in 1987, originally. But that California is very different than the California that's here right now. So she wrote this whole thing about, in general, and I don't know if you notice this, how many of us, and I'm just looking at your ages, we are different ages, but the younger people I know, I'm very close with my niece and some other people around 30 years old. They're struggling right now looking at their future and what the planet affords. The older people are mourning their past. What's different? So here's the thing is, why don't we acknowledge those spaces of grief, suffering, anxiety? Absolutely causes all that. But after a while, I can't keep myself mired in it because I'm not doing anybody any good. So I look at those kind of things, and in a process of letting go, I'm kind of like, let me look at the present. And this article talked a little bit about that. And this was a little bit more on ecological terms of, let's just get on with it in California of what we need to do, how we want to construct new buildings and how we want to clear spaces and forests and things. But just in your own life, like I'm really introducing to my life, like weekly of like, okay, instead of bemoaning what California is like, the Santa Cruz area now, like people have this idea, they go, oh, you're in Santa Cruz, oh, how great. And I'm like, it used to be great, it's very different now. But then I'm like, you know what? This walk out there by the ocean, it's pretty great. So I'm going to focus on the positive. And the more I keep extending to the others in my community to lend some balance and perspective to them, which is that first pillar of joy, perspective, okay, is can you keep a bigger perspective this week as well? But we're going to talk more about that. Perspective for me is, the other day I was kind of feeling down about something, and then Punsok had this aneurysm. This monk had this brain bleed. And I went, oh, keep it in perspective. That is not my life. Like I am not there in a hospital room the poor. I just can't believe this is happening, frankly. I know him, and it's just, so I just went like, I've got a pretty good scene here right now. So, many of us here have health challenges, different things like that. So that's a big one. But again, how can you keep showing up daily, weekly, monthly with being present and finding what's positive about that presence? Because there's a lot, even amidst the pandemic and all these things that are going on. There are little wake ups every day of some jewel that's there. And we have to keep going for others. We have to keep doing that, feeding that. It's not about me anymore. It's really about, I really want to help all these people. There's a lot of people suffering. I really want to help them. So I got to keep buoyant for them. That gives me energy. That gives me energy, enormous energy like that. We can do it. But we can do it, and we can do it even more together. Okay? I'll ask you to trust me on that one.
Okay.
Okay. So I want to thank you so much. I just want to read a few dedication prayers right now. I'm going to share my screen. And I first, of course, want to dedicate to Punsok, Venerable Punsok, and whatever is best to have happen for him. And I'd really like to dedicate, as Lama Zopa said, to his taking a precious human rebirth and being able to live in that rebirth with as much benefit and progression to enlightenment quickly so he can benefit all living beings. Let me just share my screen and we can do some dedication prayers together. Okay. I think you can see that, yeah?
Mhm.
I'm going to make it bigger. Can everybody see that? Okay. Janju Senjo Rinpoche Mage Panam Ge Yurchig Ge Banyam Pa Me Pa Yi Gone Gondu Belwar Sho. However many sick sentient beings there are, may they quickly be freed from all sicknesses. May all the sicknesses without exception of transmigratory beings never occur again. And I'd like to seal this with emptiness. This is the most important dedication, Lama Zopa Rinpoche says. Due to all the past, present, and future merits collected by me, the numberless Buddhas, the numberless sentient beings, which are completely empty of existing from their own side, may I, who am completely empty of existing from my own side, achieve the state of full enlightenment, which is completely empty of existing from its own side, and lead all sentient beings who are completely empty of existing from their own side to that state, which is completely empty of existing from its own side, by myself alone, who am completely empty of existing from my own side. Whatever understanding you have of emptiness, please reflect for a moment. I fully dedicate all these virtues to be able to train just like the hero Manjushri who knows reality, and just like Samantabhadra as well. And for the long lives of His Holiness and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. For Lama Zopa Rinpoche, you who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the three sublime ones, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Thank you so much. And if you want to unmute, we can say good evening. And I'm very excited to see you next week. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Sunny. Thank you, Shanti Deva Center.
Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable. Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you next week.
Enjoy.
Thank you. Namaste.
Love you to see you, Jeff.
I'm back.
I'm so glad. Hey, Peggy, lovely to see you in pink. Oh, she's gone. And Ross and Kelly and Margot. Enjoy.
John.